夢ペンダント。これを使えば素敵な体験、夢 R が諸君を待っている。
Well, to be fair, it does make more sense than trying to do it with just a scouter over one eye. Seriously, the world building in Zeal did not make any sense. Our film opens with a little reminder of Nonika's suffering, as if that wasn't hammered into our heads in the series proper.
夢を見てたの。
どんな夢？
夢を見ている。赤い雪、赤く染まった世界。
Pro tip, never dream in anime. The team had arrived in Tokyo, not for the Olympics, but rather to participate in a trial run for a new invention created by this lady who kind of looks like a certain risque pro hero.
私は画集院サレナ。我が偉大なる発明品はもうご存知かな?
Well, I see someone's trying to run for Hokage again. Her invention, known as the Dream Pendant, gave people access to the Yume Aru system, an AR world that I think our protagonists were already in as they were surrounded by a bunch of unmoving NPCs. Nah, but seriously, they engaged the devices in a nicely done sequence.
夢 R システムとリンクします。
リンクスタート。
Hey, I had to do it, and don't think that's going to be the only SAO reference in this entire review. And yet, like many anime that try to incorporate all this sort of future tech, they really stretched the boundaries of what this augmented reality was capable of, as apparently they could touch and even taste the stuff that shouldn't be there. Still, I could overlook this sci-fi fantasy writing because we also got some very cute and fashionable designs provided by the mangaka, the Kamikita Futago, for our heroines' AR clothing, and at least there was a limit to this stuff.
一時的に機能が制限されます。
This is what happens when you let Microsoft design your product. Following the opening that was sadly shortened but still an amazing song, the Precure and the fairies managed to walk around the city freely since apparently everyone got their own little AR buddies. Personally, I would go with the real main protagonist of a certain card game anime. However, while Latte didn't need to pretend to be an AR pet, there was something, or rather someone, she wanted to see. And it turned out to be this very obvious movie main character who Nodoka quickly befriended and got a very ominous warning from.
のどかちゃん、今すぐ東京から離れて。
You gotta get out of here before Kirito makes you just another part of his harem! Also, yeah, if Kaguya here sounds young, it's because her actress, Seiran Kobayashi, was about 16 at the time of this film's release, and yet she's already shown a lot of potential as a VA, even playing Eri in Hero Aka. And hey, if Deku's not around, you can always rely on Froppy here. But yeah, after she quickly left and almost made me think that Nodoka was going to be the only one who could see her, she's not, Latte explained that she felt a presence from her similar to a suffering element. Later, a big event was taking place in Shibuya that thankfully wasn't a Reaper's game this time, and we were also introduced to our main antagonist of the film, voiced by Wataru Takagi, which was then appropriately followed by an appearance by his more well-known role in this franchise, Bumby. And this would be his only cameo in the entire film. I mean, to be fair, I don't think he was in any of the advertisements for this film, so you can't really say it was false advertising. That would come later. But still, come on, at least have him do something funny. I mean, I definitely prefer him over these two obvious celebrity guest stars who are on par with that reporter for wooden acting. Thankfully, Kaguya arrived to act as the idol who encouraged everyone to keep using the AR system. Okay, yeah, she's totally the Yuna of this film. Still, Hinata explained how she was a popular young model, who she also happened to be a huge fan of, and even seemed to have sponsorships with that one bear anime you sometimes see on Netflix. Boo, I wanted a Gretzko. She also happened to be the daughter of Professor Gashuin, whose invention had the ability to send everyone's hopes and dreams up to a big plant in the sky called the Miracle Flower. Oh, this is a great setup for the Hardcatch team to appear in. No, wait, that's the next movie. Oh well, I'm sure nothing else in this film will remind me of that series. Okay, to be fair, this was meant to be more like the gig of Yogans from Healing Good series proper, and there would even be a good storyline reason for that in this film. Anyway, our antagonist named, wait, what was this guy's name again? Well, I see someone's good friends with 11. So, Lego Maego launched an attack leading to a fantastic save fight with our main heroines. Yeah, while I wouldn't say Healing Good's fights were the worst, their usual rural setting of Skoyaka did get a little boring. This fight in Shibuya, on the other hand, looks so much better thanks to the more neon setting, and of course the usual stupid fun stuff like fighting down the side of a building and yet somehow not damaging the windows for the most part. Eventually, Lego Maego split himself into 10 copies, both to give himself the numbers advantage, and to pull off a dance popularized by Exile, a Japanese boy band from the 2000s. I mean, come on, that would be like referencing the Backstreet Boys today, and you really get pop culture, don't you, Disney? With the numbers stacked against them, things looked hopeless until they arrived.
ヒーリングとプリキュアのみんなね。遅れてすみません。
Oh yeah, don't worry, we're only like, 10 minutes into the film, that's all. Seriously, I didn't really skip over anything. There's no build up to the arrival of the Precure 5, and no, I don't count the Bumby cameo. He has earned the right to go wherever he wants in this franchise. But yeah, the only in-story connection that these characters had was mostly through the healing animals seeming to know Coco and Nuts, which has kind of been a thing with the fairy partners since Deluxe 1. Personally, I like to think that they're all good drinking buddies. Still, little build up or not, we did get some more excellent fight scenes with mostly the appropriate pairings. We had the pinks, the blue tints, the yellows with a bit of red in there, though not exactly sure why we didn't get a pairing between the OP Purple Six Rangers. Come on, how could you get more spot on than that? But whatever, we got a bit of Nodoka backhanding the Harvest Element sword. That alone is almost as awesome as her pulling off the Mars Rosario. And with that, they defeated all the copies before hitting the original with the healing arrows. God, even in death, this guy wants his crappy frozen waffles. However, since he wasn't exactly a Byokids, again, more on that in just a bit, he managed to escape full purification. With that, the Precure 5 split up to try and chase him down, while the Healing Good team dealt with his victim. Bye girls, see you just in time for the climax! Later, Kaguya met with the Healing Good team in their civilian forms, as earlier she managed to figure out Nodoka's secret identity. This is because she had the ability to see everyone's. So, everyone has a heart flower and a heart bud? Should I become a vegetarian? Yeah, okay, at this point, I'm just gonna assume Heart Catch takes place in a different universe in order to make sense of all of this. Anyway, Nodoka and her main character status gave her a special extra sparkly bud that made her both distinctive for Kaguya and a prime target for Lego Maego. She knew this because he was originally a byproduct of her mother's research, having been created from a sample of the Byogans. And they never explained where they got that sample, or even what sort of sample they got, like was it megaparts or maybe some of that bile they spew up. Personally, and considering Nodoka was going to be the main focus of this film, I think an interesting twist would have been to have the sample be from the Darizen strain. It would have matched well with this film's flower motif, and also given Nodoka a much more personal stake in the conflict, as she would have to exterminate yet another remnant of the disease that had tortured her for several years. Though that would also mean they'd be fighting a movie monster created by a mad doctor from the main character's disease, and yeah, I guess they already do have enough parallels with X8 as is. Anyway, they agreed to keep in close contact with Kaguya should anything come up, in particular, Hinata. Of course, as even I predicted, the tale of the bamboo cutter managed to work its way into this film as it was Kaguya's favorite foreshadowing story. The next morning, Nozomi seemingly called the Healing Good team in a very robotic voice and told them that they had resolved the conflict. Yeah, should figure Professor Agasa would eventually try to capitalize on that stuff. The Healing Good team informed Kaguya about this, and I swear, they barely removed that stupid clipping disco ball from Hachiko's head. That poor doggy has suffered enough. Anyway, with their schedules seemingly freed up, our heroines and Kaguya walked around Tokyo, possibly to help promote the Olympics that were supposed to take place around this film's release date. Okay, come on, that's just a line from Heart Catch. All the while, Kaguya shared her death flags, memories of her past with her mother, and how she wanted to be with her forever and all that. This in turn allowed Nodoka to parallel it with her relationship with her mother, in particular during her hospitalization. Later, Kaguya tried to find her mother to discuss her birthday that she was going to celebrate with the Precure the next day, but ended up discovering not just Lego Maego, but also Orochimaru's research lab. In fact, she had already caught both Boruto and his dad.
Well, I've seen enough controversial.
Yeah, no big surprise, the prof was an antagonist, as if all of her ominous low-angle shots didn't give it away. And she was using Lego My Eggle and the Precure 5 to help fully bloom the miracle flower as quickly as possible, for reasons that she remained cryptic about for dramatic effect. Of course, Kaguya couldn't accept this, which also resulted in some tension between the antagonists.
You keep telling yourself that, Nijimura.
And while I'll admit, some of this stuff is played out, this exchange between the mother and daughter was pretty well directed. I especially love some of the more subtle body language, like Kaguya thinking about throwing down her book, but instead just dropping it, suggesting that while she was disgusted with her mother's atrocities, she also couldn't completely bring herself to hate her. Regardless, she still fled, after having a bit of a fainting spell that she also had earlier in the film. And as we would later see, this was signifying that her petal wings were disappearing, which of course meant that she was also slowly dying. And if that wasn't traumatic enough, a flashback later heavily implied that Gakushuin had lost the rest of her family in a collapsed building. Interestingly enough, they never directly clarified this very heavy stuff because frankly, we didn't need it as we could just see it all on screen.
Stuff like this is why I do like the writer of this film, Ryunosuke Kingetsu, as he does seem to have enough respect for even the child audience to let them fill in the blanks.
It makes these scenes where Kaguya goes over her time with her mother all the more poignant as we really get to experience what she's gone through. Good stuff. But yeah, as the Precure were getting ready for her boss day party.
Ooh, Kogami would not be happy with you, dude.
A giant flying whale they rode on earlier in the film brought them to Kaguya. She revealed that she wasn't in fact the prof's actual daughter, but rather a creation of the miracle flower because they have to be rather on the nose with these references. Honestly, I'm surprised she didn't come out of some bamboo, but I guess that wouldn't be as pretty as a flower. Anyway, they agreed to help stop her mother, and they would have to hurry as the young girl's petals began to fade, so did the AR world that she was linked to. This resulted not only in the tragic loss of the Kamikita's designs, but also forced the prof's hand, as rather than slowly and subtly collecting everyone's dream energy, she just had Lego My Ego.
A bunch of tentacles are attacking Tokyo. Must be a day ending in Y.
Of course, this also meant the Precure's ride wasn't going to be able to stick around, forcing them to make a landing.
You gonna do superhero landing? Wait for it! Superhero landing!
And I guess since Madoka and Eri were competing to see whose character could suffer more, Mrs. Handera also got her butt stolen. This prompted the healing animals to get serious, and with the power of the dream pendants, managed to unlock their awesome looking partner forms. With that, they made their way to the final stage as Gakushuin managed to fully bloom the miracle flower, which then conveniently shrunk down to a more portable size. Of course, she wanted to use the flower to extend Kaguya's life, which, as it turned out, had only been shortened because of her creation, the Yume Aura system.
So yeah, the thing the prof was using to save her daughter was also what was killing her?
To be fair, they did explain how shutting down the Yume Aura project would also mean giving up the dream they shared together, which was to create something that could improve everyone's lives, and I guess that was just as important as Kaguya's life. Well, okay, I can accept that it's a bit of a nasty catch-22, and also why the prof kept her goals a secret from her daughter, but you know, you're also kind of ignoring that dream if you're using your literal attack dog to essentially off the people you're trying to give better lives to.
All I'm saying is, Gakushuin, I kind of have to use this clip to describe you.
You are the dumbest, smart person I have ever met in my life.
Then again, I guess you could say that the dream got warped along the way with a certain blue wolf representing that divergence. And sure enough, Lego My Ego pulled a Marx and stole her wish item at the last minute. This transformed him into a bigger doggy and led into my personal favorite fight of this film with easily some of the best effects and choreography.
夢に大きいも小さいもありません
Try to tell that's the King of Conquerors.
Unfortunately, the Precure 5's arrival kind of needlessly broke up the fast-paced action. Though yeah, they were still in this film, and had been released thanks to Kaguya sacrificing one of her petals. And it's not as though they even contributed that much to this fight, as the Healing Good team then just proceeded to launch their special movie finishers, which gave the healing animals some really creepy big dead eyes.
Thanks, I was like being reminded of the Pro Badger.
Whatever, they defeated him, and the film began to wrap up with Kaguya selflessly returning everyone's dreams, in spite of herself being at the end of the line.
Okay, a bit of a downer, but I would say overall this film was a wait, is Lego My Ego still alive? Huh? We still got 10 minutes.
Yeah, this would have been a good spot to start wrapping things up, but I honestly think they decided to throw in this last fight in at the last minute to give the guest team a bit more of an actual purpose. Certainly would explain why Lego My Ego's final form after taking in Kaguya did not match up with any of his previous forms. Also, good god, I did not think a toy villain could have more forms than frickin' Evolto. Now granted, I did like seeing the prof trying to rescue her daughter here, but I don't think we needed yet another fight to be able to have this legit tearjerker. Well, whatever, we got a really brief, though still really well animated fight that ended after the two pinks managed to create a new elemental bottle and the shared super form. Oh yeah, Nodoka lost her partner form partway into this fight, and yeah, this form doesn't even look quite as good as their base forms due to the overabundance of white in my opinion. Still, they defeated him, and thankfully third time's a charm, as they also used speech no jutsu to reform the guy who's been nothing short of a total asshole throughout this film. With that, Kaguya's last petal fell, but Nodoka wasn't about to give up on her, and asked for help from the city, and likely the people in the cinema. Yeah, this was likely the Miracle Light scene, but since they didn't want kids in the cinemas to stand up and vocally cheer during these times, they instead had them silently wish on their dream pendants. A good call on multiple fronts, as there was no forced fourth wall breaking, and they practiced safety first, which I always respect. With everyone's support, Nodoka unlocked yet another super form for her.
Okay, forget the villain of this film. Nodoka is competing with Gyo for the most form changes.
I mean, it's still a really nice form, looking like an even fancier version of the partner form, and the combination of the animation and the insert song Grace Flowers made for a truly beautiful scene to behold, but still, I gotta make this reference.
俺は一人じゃない。俺たちは一つだ。
With that, I guess Kaguya was now a real girl, and the film's credits featured shots from the entire Healing Good series proper, because this did come out after the fact, and they ended on a picture of everyone celebrating Kaguya's birthday, except for the Precure 5, because I guess they were paid by the hour.
Okay, so with that, now I can say, overall this film was Huh? There's still more?
Yeah, for whatever reason, they decided to play this Tropical Rouge short film after the credits as opposed to before the actual film. I'm not sure if this was the case for the cinemas too, and if it was, I do hope they gave a heads up to theater goers, as not everyone's just gonna stick around expecting Nick Fury to show up at the end. Anyway, not much of an actual story to talk about here, as the Healing Good team just invited Manatsu's crew to a dance-off on a secluded island, and I guess as a form of hazing for the new team, they only gave them 3 minutes before showtime. Thus, they somehow got on a plane and did notice that the pilot was a Yaneda, along with the plane itself, which then disappeared and forced them to fight a pirate ship Yaneda, which they defeated with some help from Laura using her Aquaman powers in order to make it just in time for the second credit roll.
Everybody got that? Good!
So yeah, a lot of random stuff just kind of happens, but to be fair, I think this was meant to be more of a demo reel for Tropical Rouge with some excellent animation. They certainly put a lot of effort into Manatsu's meme faces, so I think it's best to treat this like the dessert after a long meal. There's nothing of actual healthy substance here, but damn is it a satisfying sugar rush. The short concluded with collab versions of the second Healing Good and first Tropical Rouge ending dances. Cute stuff, though we all know they've danced to much better tunes.
Are we good this time? Okay? Alright. So with that, I would say the best way to describe this film is excessive, both in the best and worst of ways.
On the one hand, this thing goes all out on its fight scenes, which look incredible, as well as delivering some emotional highs, which, while a little played out, are still quite effective. But on the other hand, it also feels a little bloated, having been stuffed with a ton of form changes for both the protagonist and antagonist, some of which are only on screen for a few seconds. Oh yeah, and then there was that other Precure team who were just kind of there.
All in all, though, I would still say it's a very enjoyable film, especially if you think of it as just a Healing Good solo film, which it pretty much is. And come on, it's basically ordinal scale starring Yuki instead of Kito. That alone is a win.
To this film's credit, they didn't even try to treat the AR stuff as anything within the realm of reality. They pretty much went full into the fantasy element, which I can at least appreciate more than something that tries to take its high concepts way too seriously. As a result, they were able to take advantage of some of the more fantastical elements of the Yume R system to turn Tokyo into a literal city of dreams that could easily be stolen away when reality comes a-knocking. But yeah, this made for one of the more visually impressive Precure films to date in terms of design, and of course fight scenes, expertly handled by the likes of Yu Yoshiyama, Yuichi Hamano, Futoshi Higashide, all under the direction of Katsumi Tamegai. They all did a great job providing action that did get a little out of hand. Yeah, the plot, while having some strong emotional moments, especially between Kaguya and the professor, also had some needless excess, most notably with the Precure 5. Nothing against these characters, but really, they didn't contribute that much to the overall plot, and worst of all, had barely any interactions with the Healing Good team, and nothing with Kaguya, which made the final fight to save the latter ring a little hollow. On that note, while certainly a spectacle, I think the film really should have ended the action scenes with the Miracle Flower powered wolf and just had the reconciliation between the daughter and child, which again was one of the strongest elements of this film in my opinion. I'm honestly convinced they added that in when they realized that the guest team did almost nothing throughout the duration of the film. So, while I wouldn't say they took too much away from this film, they also didn't add anything and were definitely shoehorned in. I personally would have preferred them focusing more on the struggles of the mother and child coming to terms with their shared dream, which brought them both the greatest of joys, and yet also the most tragic of losses. It made Gakshrin a really interesting antagonist, which more than made up for Lego by Ego just being a petty brute. I really hope the next film, guest starring a veteran team, can incorporate them a little better than this, or at least not distract too much from what's clearly meant to be more of a solo film. Overall, I would say this was an above-average Precure film that could have been great if they had just kept their dreams and aspirations a little more in check.
Next up on the docket is the Toy Protagonist analysis video, which I have been able to gather up all of the necessary material for. It's just gonna be a fun little video essay before I get back to finishing up Gold Princess, followed by another certain magical girl series. Also, in the near future, I do plan on uploading stuff onto my new secondary channel. No ETA just yet, but do look forward to a grown man geeking out about card games in fantasy worlds, and yes, as well as on cars and motorcycles. And until then though, farewell for now my friends, and if you'll excuse me, I'm gonna check if I can get Hulu on this thing.